Hello and welcome to this review discussion for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond on Nintendo Switch 2. I'm Jordan Midler and I'm joined by VGC's Andy Robinson, who has the ability to turn into a ball. Andy, how are you doing on this fine December morning?
Hello, mate. I'm okay. I'm
Yep.
all right, I think.
You've spent a couple of weeks now in the company of Samus et al. So here we'll be discussing the game. No spoilers. It'll just be kind of what you can expect from a traditional review in video form. So Andy, give me the elevator, the review summary, if you will, of why you've decided to give Metroid Prime 4 Beyond 3 stars.
I'm a big Metroid fan, and I did really enjoy this game. But I think it's a step backwards, and it's quite flawed in a lot of different ways. When it's trying to be Metroid, it's a absolutely great game. You know, it has all of the mood and the kind of the puzzle gameplay. Like aesthetically and mechanically, it feels like a worthy successor to those original Prime games that are nearly like 20 years old now. But the further the game goes on, the more kind of muddled the experience gets. It's a bit of like a Frankenstein game where they've tried to make something that's going to appeal to the hardcore fans, but also kind of maybe broaden the audience. And that's when you get these NPC characters that are, quite heavily featured in the game, very chatty Marvel style characters that, will talk to you on the intercom. They'll, at points in the game, you'll have to go on missions with them and defend them and, do escort missions that will result in a game over screen if you kind of don't pay attention to them. And then even like the structure of the game, probably more so as it develops, because it's not really a Metroidvania. It's more like a Zelda game. It's like a, pre-Breath of the Wild Zelda. There's an overworld, like that's a desert area that you can see in all the trailers. And that's basically the Hyrule field of this game. And that's how you reach all of the different environments. The dungeons of Metroid. There's like a big fire mountain on one corner that gets you to the fire world, and there's a big tree that gets you to the jungle world, and an ice cap mountain that, and you have to ride your new motorbike over there, which is basically this game's Epona. You even have to collect 5 keys, from 5 worlds, and there's a big tower with a shield in the middle that unlocks. And, by itself, that's not really an issue. It's actually, there's a point of this game, halfway through this game, I'm scoring it higher than I did, right? I was enjoying it more. As the further I went on, the less I enjoyed it. The more ordinary the experience became through these influences, because it becomes, the Metroidvania games are about exploration and discovery and puzzle solving, and, emergent storytelling. And it just felt like by the time the credits rolled that experience had been diluted. There's rarely a moment in this game where you have to think. Like, you'll have a phone call from, the now infamous Miles McKenzie, annoying NPC, and he'll just tell you where to go. By the time you reach the end of the game, you'll have the ability to just display any items you've missed straight on the map and just go and get them. It's by far the easiest, Metroid. I 100%ed it comfortably in my first attempt, keeping in mind it's a review environment with no guides. And that's kind of what it feels like. It's rounded. The edges have been rounded off, and it's definitely probably the most accessible Metroid. There's probably a lot of people who will play this and enjoy it, if it's their first Metroid. But it's on top of the tonal issues, right? This has been talked about to death, so I won't dwell on it. The characters feel so out of place. A lot of them do even. And speaking characters have been done well in this series, and they've been done well in, kind of other franchises before, right? Like I watched Predator Badlands last night, and it was like, oh my God, Nintendo needs to watch this, as an example of how you expand an IP with like, the Predators are chatting and walking around and they've got companions, but it completely works, like tonally, thematically, it works. In this, it's like they've parachuted Jar Jar Binks into Alien, right? There are points where I want to claw my face off, but then other times there are some NPCs, like there's one of the NPCs is like a stoic sniper type lone hunter, right? and he fits perfectly. Like if you got rid of the Marvel guys and you kept like people like him, it would be spot on. So it's not their presence that's the issue. It's the haphazard implementation, in this game that's been done with not enough due care, in my opinion. But yeah, like it's the rounding off of the edges, the tonally inconsistent kind of characters. It kind of like it doesn't really know what it wants to be. By the time you kind of cross that halfway point, you're on, these Halo style expeditions with your companions, and there's just that sense of discovery, and the Metroidvania kind of feel of this game isn't quite there. Like you don't really because all the worlds are separate. Again, the Zelda thing by itself is not an issue. Like the style, it's the worlds, because the worlds are not connected. Kind of like similar to the last game, Prime 3, if you played it. You kind of just like, it's just the backtracking. It doesn't feel clever or interconnected in a design perspective, and that's really probably this could have been saved if it was particularly there were particularly special moments, or real kind of series highlight bosses and stuff. And understandably, I think, considering how long this game's taken to make, and the turmoil in the development, like they changed developers after a couple of years as well, didn't they? It's kind of understandable that it's kind of like a pretty safe and steady Metroid game by design, but because of that, it's really difficult to recommend even for newcomers. Excuse me, over Metroid Prime Remastered. I bet Metroid Prime Remastered, that release was designed to build kind of hype and awareness for this. But ironically, it just serves a reminder that game is just better for all the sum of its parts, right? Like the bosses, the items, the environments, the design, they're just better. It's like the main idea, or one of the main ideas, are these psychic powers. And basically it's your scan visor before, except now that you can move stuff like a Jedi. And I don't mean like a physics system. It's very analog.
It's not free control. You're not.
No, it's sort of like, see that thing over there, you can move it up and down, right?
Okay.
So it's not really that interesting, and it doesn't meaningfully evolve through the game. And the only, aside from, there's one ability which is basically lifted from Zelda Skyward Sword. It's called the control beam. And you can fire your shot and then control it in slow motion, so you can hit multiple targets at once.
Like the beetle and Skyward Sword.
Yeah, so there's exactly what it is. So there's like 3 switches that are around the corner or something. You can use it to hit them. But beyond that, all the powers are very much like Metroid staples, except they're a bit purple. It'd be like, it's the psychic morph ball bomb. It's the psychic, power bomb. The psychic grapple. It's just all the stuff from the first game, right? So when it's Metroid, you're having a blast. But it never, even though it's like it's never quite hitting the heights of those games. And also, I should have special mention. This game is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
The art direction, the audio direction. Aesthetically and mechanically, like I said, it feels the part. Retro Studios have done an amazing job. I really enjoyed this game as a Metroid fan. I did. I'm just kind of being objective here as a critic, that I don't think it's one of the better Prime games. I think it's quite flawed. However, I enjoy playing it, and I'm really looking forward to see what they do next, and hopefully they listen to some of the feedback from this. But I don't know. But that said, we're recording this before the review embargo. There's every chance I'm the outlier here. I mean, I know of some other sites who are reviewing it similarly to us, but obviously I don't know at the time of recording this the broad consensus. So I might just be the angry old man. People. This is the role of critics these days, right? You hone in on someone who has a similar, kind of style to you, a similar, stance. And, you kind of stick with them. And if you look at my track record recently, I have been a little bit down on stuff. I didn't like the Zelda Echoes of Wisdom too much. I loved Donkey Kong, but I didn't love it as much as some of the other critics.
So I wanted to ask you, you brought it up there about the original Metroid Prime. Obviously, for a lot of people, Metroid Prime 1 Remaster will probably be their first introduction to the Prime series. Obviously, these games were kind of hardcore titles on the GameCube, which was already a console that wasn't anywhere near the level of popularity of the Switch. What can you speak to the kind of shock that will come from a player of Metroid Prime 1 going into this game? And do you think it would have been better for them to also do 2 and 3 in a remaster in the lead up to kind of bridge the gap there? Because this will be people's first or second Metroid game.
Do you know what? I think you make a good point, actually, probably by accident. Going from Metroid Prime 1 to this would be quite jarring because they are very different. They're quite different games. However, this has been the direction of travel for the Metroid Prime series for a while. Any hardcore fan will tell you that. I think a lot of Prime 2 and 3, 2 was way less popular than the first game, which is part of the reason that they probably pivoted to where we are now. They famously asked them to kind of make it in 18 months and they pumped it out, and it was very, very hardcore. And it was on the GameCube at the end of its life cycle, and expectedly it didn't do very well. But if you play, this is more like the sequel to Prime 3. If you go and play Prime 3 on Wii, it's also, sadly in bits, is the sequel to Other M, which is for me is the worst entry in the series. If you go and play that, this is the logical next step. They were companions for not at this level, but there were other speaking characters in Prime. It was overly hand-holdy, constantly telling you where to go. The worlds were completely segregated. They were on planets and you flew there. So there was none of that Metroidvania interconnection. So in that sense, yes, it would probably, if they did release those, it would be a smoother bridge. And I do think a lot of people, look, I had a great time playing this game. I've played this game to like 100% to absolute pieces, the last week or so. However, I'm just, if you're asking me to stick a number on it and be critical, I don't think it's as good as the other ones.
A few more Nintendo Switch 2 specific things. Did you try out much of the mouse control? That was much lauded and kind of the lead up, especially since it's one of the things that the Switch 2 does that previous consoles haven't had.
I mean, for that to me is another thing that kind of like is typical of what this game is. It just doesn't know what it wants to be. It's got 3 different control schemes. All of them are really quite different. And you can just choose one, but the game's not really, it doesn't really know what it's made for. I mean, I picked the gyro controls, which is because for me, the Wii remote controls in Metroid Prime 3 are the best FPS controls ever. I don't think the gyro is quite there for me. Like if you're a pointer, I like to be able to point at the center bar and it feels more accurate if there's a fixed point rather than having to change it every 2 minutes. I find that irritating. But I stuck with that because the game design still requires that accuracy. There'll be bosses with weak points on different parts that you have to kind of hit quickly. The mouse, for me, sat on a sofa, is not, it didn't feel right. I still think it feels wrong using it feels like changing a Halo to a PC game, right? It just feels wrong. But then you can play in the classic controls, right? And then it's just radically different where you're just playing dual stick and you lock on and stuff. And going from one to, like, I played the whole game with gyro, and then when I'm playing handheld and I'm trying to get some footage and stuff, I change back to normal and it's like, what the hell? Like, I just didn't know how to control it. I certainly don't think it's worth, the mouse controls are not like a great selling point for me on Switch 2 version. The selling point is that it looks stunning. I've not seen the Switch 1 version. They haven't given it to press.
Same situation with Pokemon Legends ZA. Yeah, they focus on the Switch 2 version. Is there a world in which a player can go through Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, skipping all the cutscenes and alleviating a lot of that kind of annoyance and tonal jarring? No? No.
From what I can see, you can't turn it off.
Okay.
There's a thing to turn off the tutorials, and I thought, that must turn off the guy who phones me up every single time I have to go somewhere. Nope, it doesn't. I think you can turn off the voice acting, but the messages will still come up. It's like, imagine you get a new gun. It's like, oh, hey, Samus, have you thought about going back to Iceforge to check out your new tool? It's like, oh, fuck's sake. You know? Just
Do you
he
think
doesn't he doesn't trust the player to think at all, and that's not a Metroid game. And again, this is a good point to make actually, and I say this in my review. When I say I enjoyed this game throughout, I mean it in a breezy, leave your brain at the door, popcorny sort of way, right?
Yes.
Which is not like I didn't have to think. And there's some guys like going, "Oh wow, she's doing a morph ball," you know,
Yeah.
like, and that's not what I associate with this series at all. It's fine. But there's part when this game feels like Metroid, it's great. But there are big chunks where it doesn't feel like Metroid at all.
It's like Metroid should be almost a survival horror FPS. Like at its peak, it should
100%. Metroid is a horror game, right?
Yeah.
And there are points when it tries to do that in this. It tries to be scary. But then Jar Jar Binks calls you up, right? And then you're like, doing wheelies on a motorbike. And it's just, it feels like a lot of awkward compromises that result in this weird patchwork that never really settles on its own identity. Because that's what, for me, Metroid should be, I'd love to see a Breath of the Wild style Metroid, complete isolation where you figure it out on your own. You're dropped on an alien planet of discovery. I think that would really work. But obviously they've decided to go in a different direction. I think it's consistent. I don't think anyone can really say, oh, wow, this is a wild U-turn. Because if you go and look at Prime 3, this has been the direction of travel. The producer in Nintendo, Tanabe, he's wanted to turn this into the buddy cop space Guardians of the Galaxy thing for a while. They just haven't kind of been bold enough to go this far up to this point, I don't think. So, it's difficult because it's easy to say, I was watching Predator Badlands last night and you're thinking Nintendo would never make Metroid like this, right? But at the same time, Metroid wouldn't exist if it wasn't outside of Nintendo.
Yeah.
It's always been a niche game for them, but it serves a purpose within their portfolio. It attracts a different audience. It brings into the ecosystem, very popular with the American audience, right? If another company owned Metroid, we wouldn't be getting this game at all. So I guess in that sense, I'm grateful.
I wonder if this game could be seen as some kind of a response to Dread, because Dread was that hardcore game. Obviously, we all absolutely loved it, but it wasn't as successful as Nintendo wanted by all accounts. Do you think that maybe?
Well, I think at this point, if they're trying to make these games to be successful, they're barking up the wrong tree, because no one's going to, whether this, we give this game 3 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. I think the same amount of people are going to buy it. They've tried at this point, 40 years to sell this game. It just is what it is what it is. Of course they have a heritage, Nintendo, of splitting their series into, one for the old school, one for the new school. They do it with Zelda now. They're regularly kind of putting out 2D Zeldas, 2D Mario as well. So yeah, that would make sense, that because Dread was absolutely fantastic. However, the direction of travel in the games industry now shows that, certainly it's difficult to know what will be successful, but the stuff that is successful is the stuff that has its own niche, does something different from everything else. So in that sense, I know they're a platform holder, and so the business is different. So in that sense, it does feel a little bit a flawed thinking to go, well, let's make Metroid more like everything else. Because at times, there are times in this game where you stop yourself and you think, I could be playing any sci-fi shooter. And that's not Metroid, right? Look at Resident Evil and in the 2010s, that kind of like from Resident Evil 5 to Resident Evil 7, that gap where they were trying to work out what that was. And, they had like Resident Evil 6, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's basically a corridor shooter, like an action game. And it's just not what that series was, right?
There's also clearly an appetite in games now, in the audience at least, for games that are hard, that are complex. And
yes, that's what I mean. But Resident Evil, this is my point, is that they tried to make Resident Evil, to broaden the appeal, make it more cinematic, make it for the YouTube generation, and then what they ended up is completely U-turning and doubling down on what it's always been about. And now it's more successful than it's ever been.
Yeah.
It's a horror game that doubles down on all the things that fans want from that series.
Well, as we're wrapping up here, your final thoughts on Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and kind of where you see this series going. It doesn't sound like it's going to be the game that gets Metroid on the wall at the pop-up Nintendo store. It's still just going to be an isolated shelf off in the back, perhaps.
I think they've got plans for the series. I don't think that the success or failure of this game has any bearing on what they do. I think it, as I said earlier, I think it serves a big purpose. You're talking about that wall on the shop. Metroid's very different from everything else, right? And in that sense, it's very important for them to try and to keep going and to make this a success. They've always struggled with their sci-fi games, if you think about it. Where's Star Fox? Where's F-Zero? It's been a challenge for them, that genre. So I think Retro Studios. This I don't think my issues with this game are any bad reflection on Retro Studios, because I think it's just anyone who's been following Metroid for a long time. This has got Tanabe and the Japanese production team written all over it. You read the Metroid art book; it's clear that's where that was coming from. I think Retro Studios, from their part, have made a gorgeous game. It plays great. I think probably I'm not so happy with the overall direction of the design of the game, but otherwise beyond that, I think they've done a phenomenal job.
Excellent. Well, you can read the full review over on VGC. If you'd like to support VGC, check out patreon.com/Video Games Chronicle for ad-free browsing, extra podcasts, and more videos. Throughout the month of December, we're running a pledge drive that you can check out over on patreon.com/Video Games Chronicle and our website. Until next time, say goodbye, Andy.
Goodbye.
And we'll see you later.